Mr. Trump, how pleasant to speak to you again, President Trump. Let's see what they say. What does she have to do with you, Henny? She's your self-proclaimed best friend, and she doesn't even have a Facebook page anymore. They don't say that, but that's the truth. I wonder who took it down so that her friends won't know what happened to her. Then Alex Jones, you remember Mr. Jones. Well, that Alex Jones is a fraud. He's a Navy man, but he's a fraud. He got his disability by pretending he lived at Henny's house because he got turned down in Virginia. He committed fraud on the government. Alex Jones is the fraudster. Lt.Col Carlisle, the husband to the murderer, and he's a murderer too, Candace Carlisle. What does Alex says? It's 1 hour ago that he wrote, and it just happened, gosh, today. Last I heard, Henny was in Yorktown. Are making arrangement to repay the money Henny loaned you? I can't wait to tell about that. Are you pretending to be an attorney to defraud other widows? Are you still trying to get more money from her? Well, Mr. Trump, guess what? Your FBI has it so that Henny could be alive in Yorktown, but we know she got murdered and disposed of. We know that they stole her property before she died, because they didn't want to take a chance that the probate court would be a place where they'd get caught for their murder scheme. They were the Confederates to the murderous doctor, whose name I won't mention since he isn't posting, but he works in Wayne County, I guess, where Henny lived. And I think you should send your FBI to Yorktown and ask Candace and Lt.Col Carlisle to come for an interview and see if they're going to say that she's in Yorktown. See if they're going to tell you that they put her through the doctor. The doctor put her in a deep coma. They're now that they realize how terrible it is to do that to someone dying, they're now saying that she wasn't in that deep coma. But they told enough people that it was part of their fraud on Henny's friends. They scared away a lieutenant colonel for two reasons. One is he had a gun and was armed, and the other was Henny was in too deep a coma for her to even you get anything out of it. She isn't looking too good because she's out under deep sedation. So don't come on by. And he said, I don't think I would. This cowardly colonel, who I had made clear to him, we needed someone to come by just to verify what shape she was in. And this colonel, a retired 77-year-old, he didn't want to die at 77 over someone who was probably already destined for death, because your FBI refused to do their job. Mr. Trump, your FBI has to be shut down. Christopher Wray knows that Comey failed to investigate Hillary. He changed the investigation. We were all expecting him to investigate the server. He didn't. He investigated whether or not anyone had, through whatever means, gotten to her emails that had classified data, overlooking that the server was dozens, hundreds of crimes by Hillary and by each and every one of her aides that were hiding their mail from the government. And you all gave them a pass, Mr. Trump, because the lawyers that were protecting you, Mr. Sessions had to be, I guess, totally mute, but Rob, whatever his name is, Rosenstein is part of the crime syndicate that gave the Russians permission at fast speed, permissions to buy our uranium when we don't want them to have anybody's uranium. And they fast-tracked it, and then Hillary got $145 million. You haven't done anything on it, and you've been ill-served by the lawyers that are advising you in the White House. They could have told you how to end-run Sessions, how to make Sessions appoint someone who's not involved. Instead, you appointed the one person that was the most involved other than Mueller and Comey, Mr. Rosenstein. And also, Mr. Trump, it may or may not be too late for all the crimes. There's a bunch of crimes that it's not too late on. But you don't seem to care. You almost wanted to give her a pass. Politically, it was You say lock her up, you say prosecute her to the fullest extent of the law, and then you don't do anything. There is no prosecutor on her case, and the statutes of limitations have been falling on every one of her crimes. Now you got these people laughing at you because we don't know if she's alive or dead because your FBI sat on their butt. They refused to investigate an alleged kidnap victim who was going to be killed. They knew that. And they didn't do anything, and you've allowed it to continue. And anyone who is anyway connected to you and doesn't tell you that your rear end is sticking out. So is Mr. Ray's. But Mr. Ray doesn't know what he's doing. He has no control over the out-of-control FBI. And in fact, the little control he has, he's covering up for him. So, is she alive in Yorktown? The murderers are saying she could be alive. How would I know? Why don't you check? Why don't you have your FBI visit Leon and Candace Carlisle at their Yorktown address? They're in the book. Why don't you? Why don't you do something that resembles the job of the chief law enforcement officer of the nation? Yes, the active one is Attorney General Barr. I'll do one of these for him too. But you, sir, have been played for the fool that you are not. You're not a fool. You just rely upon professionals. Don't do that anymore. Your lawyers are flawed. For one, Pam Bondi, I asked her to investigate a crooked official, and she gave it to the crooked official's people to investigate themselves. Isn't that cute? Isn't that, well, she didn't do it first. First, the Inspector General turned it over to Pam Bondi as Attorney General, and then Pam Bondi turned it over to the department being investigated. That woman should be nowhere near you. She has the morals of a snake. But that's just one of them. Lawyers aren't to be trusted. There are very few of them that are honorable. Very few. So please, I don't want more elders dying every week, and they are. There are elder cleansers across the nation, almost certainly. They have so well covered this one up, even though they committed crime after crime after crime after crime, the FBI had already been taken into their murderous cabal. And the U.S. Attorney refuses to take any of the crimes. He rejected them all. He's not going to investigate his FBI. That U.S. Attorney has, by that very call, has to be removed. Bobby Higdon, he called himself, or at least the marshal called. Bobby Higdon says none of this is, he's taken none of this. He rejects it all. Go, Bobby Higdon says. His real name is Robert J. Higdon Jr., but the boys, I guess, had journalistic rights of, maybe he didn't, Bobby Higdon didn't say it that way, but he acted as though they needed to get me out of there quick and to embarrass me. And then Bobby Higdon had some young man call me up who refused to identify himself, who was going to talk to me about the 18 USC 4 notification or whatever my problem was, but he didn't even know the law. He didn't even know it was 18 USC 4. He may or may not have been a U.S. attorney. He may or may not have been Bobby Higdon's little 18-year-old son. I don't know. But he wouldn't identify himself, and he had a secure line that was totally blanked as to who it was. So, Mr. President, this is going to be a scandal this next year unless you shut it down. You've got to deal with these two murderers. They think they're so cool. Do you think it's cool to murder your mother and then say, hey, and you don't know if she's dead or not? Isn't that cool? She was my best friend. I lived at her home, ate her meals every dinner, almost without exception. 95% of the dinners I ate during those 15 years, she cooked. Because she wanted someone who cared about her. And these two animals, she knew they were abusing her from a distance. That's why she begged me back in 2004 actually 2003 she kind of begged me, but 2004, after I lived there for months and left, she begged me to come back for as long as it took for me to get a job, which I couldn't get. I've got a social disease. I'm an honest lawyer, and lawyers, honest or dishonest, nobody wants to have them unless they are there to do their thing against the other side. They certainly don't want to teach the children at a integrated high school. No, I forget. It's only integrated by the teachers. It was an all-black high school that for 17 years had been in the bottom 10, and the community, black and white, had allowed these poor black kids to have a non-functioning high school because it was filled up with too many thugs, and no teacher would stay there. I talked to one English teacher who was being assaulted by her students. They would hit her on the rear end, and she couldn't stop them, and the principal said, "That's your problem." I would have called the police immediately the first time they touched my rear end, but she was just a little girl, 23 years old, 24 years old, 100 pounds, no, 95 probably, maybe 85. And she just had to, yeah, she was working in a CD store. She had to give it up because she didn't have seniority. She could never get to the other high schools, but she wasn't going to put up with that. She'd rather be a clerk at a record store. And that's what they were doing in Wayne County. They were having all the project kids in one high school, all black, 17 years, and the state judge pretended he didn't know why it wasn't getting better. He didn't notice it was all black. That judge should be, I think, in prison. He's part of the conspiracy to deprive these young men and women of any kind of education. Only the best could learn. The ones that needed help, they weren't going to get it. There was too much of a insane asylum about it. Too much noise. No teacher could keep them under control because the principal wasn't given any of the powers and didn't have the backbone to do anything, as this girl told me. And they did not want me there because as a lawyer, I would have had to turn them into the federal authorities. You can't do this. 17 years in the bottom 10 high schools of North Carolina. Mr. President, there's a lot of problems with your nation. This is only one, but there's easily a solution to this one. Give Candace and Leon a polygraph test that fully covers it, if they're willing. They won't be. They can't be. I can give you the questions. Your FBI agents won't prepare the proper questions. I can provide them for them. And it's a yes or no. They'll be simple questions. Their involvement in the crowbar eviction of a man who lived there 15 years. We could ask a bunch of questions on that. So, Mr. President, Christopher Wray has to go. Let me just tell you, I'm a lawyer with a brain. I was #1 in my high school class of 405. Third in the state on the high school math exam. I'm smarter than you are, but you're very smart. The way you go from one subject to the next and then come back, brilliant mind. But you've made some rather immature mistakes that your mind may be brilliant, but you don't have enough, what would you call it, enough checks and balances to your decision making. You have made some rash decisions, but on the whole, what you've done for America has been good. You certainly didn't deserve impeachment. That it is amazing that you can have 3 law professors lie so much and hear this super liberal named Jonathan Turley, tell it exactly the truth. The other 3, they're bums, absolute political bums. Or was there only 2 of them? Whatever. No, it's 3 against 1. That was also bum. Mr. President, you've been ill-served by the Democrats, and you've been ill-served by your lawyers, though they can win the impeachment. Rest assured, you could have 6-year-olds present your case, and you would, of course, win the impeachment, because anyone who votes to impeach you clearly should not be in office, or at least should be a Democrat and be a whore. And that's what they are acting like. They're just whores. You didn't commit a crime. You can't impeach when you don't even have, they don't even allege a crime. When you don't allege a crime, to impeach is beyond ludicrous. It's almost treasonous. They have totally abdicated their duties under the U.S. Constitution to find the crime first. But what about this murder? I don't want any more. They're being killed probably on average, maybe several times a day across the nation. You don't catch these people because they get coverage, they get camouflage, they get the community on favor of it. Let's get rid of the dregs. And they do when they're ill. Let's catch this group, and then we go on to all the other groups. That the Chicago people have a lot of things, and they got slapped down when they tried to stop one. Well, they just didn't think it was very cool for them to kill this woman, and then they pulled out all the gold teeth. Isn't that nice? That's how much they wanted every cent she had. She was stripped of her. Of course, she was black, so it doesn't really matter in Chicago. I think she was black. I never saw her picture, but I think she was black. I got the impression she was black. Ken Ditkowsky wants to talk to your people and shut down a lot of the Chicago judicial shenanigans. He knows them. He can't stop them, but once in a blue moon, and then he gets in trouble the next time. Mr. President, you got a nation with judges that are out of control. They were part of this. My judge said that my 22 felonies she didn't accept. My judge said they had nothing to do with the case at hand. Well, Mr. President, I was being evicted. I wasn't allowed to testify because I was the defendant. And in this crazy, cockeyed Wayne County, corrupt as hell, even with a corrupt air command who was afraid of, I guess, of crossing the townies, he wouldn't take the 22 felonies despite the law. Read 18 U.S.C. 4. Military authorities have a duty. He forswore his duty, and he needs to be basically reduced to enlisted rank and then discharged from the Air Force. He should not be in command of all those magnificent fighter jets. He had suborned perjury. He tampered with me as a witness. He attempted to get me to withdraw the fact that he had indeed failed under 18 U.S.C. 4. He wanted me to drop that, or he wasn't going to do his job. So he did it again. Mr. President, his name is Colonel Don Yates. Get him out. I'm afraid the same thing is less true, but equally true as for getting him out. General Mike Holmes. He's in charge of all your combat aircraft, and the man refused to do his job under 18 U.S.C. 4. And if he can't follow a simple law, no matter who's advising him, he can't blame it on anyone else. He can read the law and know that he's supposed to accept it, and he knows he has no reason to hold it, so he just ships it off to DOJ Washington and say, this guy says a life is at risk. I don't know that I believe him, but I want you to know that because you might want to act quickly because the person might die if you move slowly. That's all he had to do. Same thing with Colonel Don Yates and his Lieutenant Colonel, Elizabeth Sprecher. She was advising him, I guess, to do all that he did, including the bad things. So I'll end it here. There's going to be one every day to you and one every day now to the FBI guy. And then on Sunday, I think I'll start with the U.S. Attorney General, who is really the one that can slap down Chris Wray, who has betrayed you, Mr. President. I think you know that. Get rid of Chris Wray. He is a cover-up artist for the FBI, and there's so much that needs to be exposed. Get rid of Christopher Wray. I think you know why. You're just afraid to do it because they get upset with you. Well, I can show you some of the things that you don't seem to understand because your lawyers are either too dumb or too in on it. They don't want Hillary prosecuted. She should have been a long time ago, Sessions or no Sessions. So we'll continue talking. You won't be listening, but I'll be talking, and it'll be there for anyone who wants to learn about how flawed your lawyers, your blankety blank lawyers that have been advising you are, including the ones that are actually in. I will accept Mr. Barr. He's a genius. Mr. Barr's every statement I have saluted. I just want him to do more actions, but I've saluted every statement. He's a wise man. And this is Samuel McAlilly. Fight the Corrupt was my original email. But now it's Kin Mapper Samuel McAlilly saying, speak to you again, Mr. President. And good luck with that you ever get a chance to defend yourself. It appears that Lawrence Tribe, who wrote my constitutional law case law book, Lawrence Tribe came up with a very nasty thing.